Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, December 2nd, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, the Buckeyes moved up to number 6 in the college football playoff rankings last night. They're really the de facto number 5 team in the country because obviously the loser of Iowa and Michigan State in the Big Ten championship game will be below the Buckeyes in the rankings. So let's look at the scenarios how Ohio State could get in the college football playoff. Really, to me, there's one scenario. That's North Carolina beating Clemson. And for people that think that's a long shot, North Carolina is only a 5-point underdog, Bax. So you're telling me there's a chance. I'm telling you there's a chance. What are your thoughts?
Oh, there's absolutely a chance. I mean, if anybody's watched UNC play this year, which is probably not most of us, they actually have a pretty darn good offense. I sat through the victory they had over Pittsburgh a few weeks ago on a Thursday night and was pretty impressed with the offensive ability they had. And they're coming off dropping 40-something points on NC State to finish out the regular season. There's a reason the betting line has moved a couple points towards North Carolina in this game. That's because people are thinking that they have a shot. Now, whether it's going to happen or not, I'm not certain, but there's another thing to keep in mind. That game is going to essentially be a home game for UNC being in the state of North Carolina. So Clemson better come in to play their A game, and I agree with you. That's the scenario where the Buckeyes get in. If UNC knocks off Clemson, then in my mind, there's no way UNC passes Ohio State. I think Clemson will fall down below the Buckeyes because you don't lose your last game and get in. We saw how that worked with Oklahoma in 2003. But UNC's not going to pass the Buckeyes. Watching that selection show last night, the schedule matrix that ESPN was using to compare strength of schedule or debunk, they used a different set last year. And when Jeff Long was asked about it, he said OSU had a significantly better schedule. Well, the Big Ten is the best conference in the country this year with 6 teams that should be ranked. How Wisconsin's not ranked is beyond me. And B, the metric that Jeff Long and them are using was one that has OSU in the 40s and North Carolina in the mid-80s. So, of course, there's a disparity between the two. In my opinion, if North Carolina wins, I'd call it an 80% chance Ohio State is the last team in. Just on the odd chance Stanford beats USC by 60 points and the committee decides that's impressive enough.
I agree with you. If North Carolina wins, Ohio State is in. To me, it's that simple. They also have a chance, the Buckeyes do, of Florida upsetting Alabama. That's needless to say, I don't see that happening. Florida's anemic offense. Maybe the Buckeyes can loan Urban Meyer back to Florida and he can coach that game. I still don't think they can come up with an offense that could do anything, but we'll see. Stranger things have happened. They do have that other chance. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'd love to see that.
I would love to see that. That would be fantastic.
The SEC is massively overrated this year. Massively. It's not a good league. I mean, let's be real blunt about it. The Big Ten this year is probably the best conference in the country with the amount of talent that they have at the top of the league. I mean, Stanford's argument to make the playoffs is they've beaten a bunch of good teams in the Pac-12, but the Big Ten can argue that they've beaten some of the best in the Pac-12. Michigan State beat a 9-3 Oregon team. Stanford themselves lost at Northwestern, who's probably the 5th best team in the conference. So the SEC, the Pac-12, people want to talk about them like they're the best leagues or the deepest leagues or whatever. That's not the case this year. And while it's extremely unlikely that a bad Florida team that won a bad SEC East can beat an above-average Alabama team, the truth of the matter is that was a 6-3 game against Auburn in the third quarter last week. So I guess anything can happen, but that's not a good league. And there's a reason that the Big Ten's getting consideration to get to, and it's not just that Ohio State's defending champs. It's also the fact that it's the best and deepest league this year.
And Ohio State's win over Michigan is the most impressive win in college football this season across the country. To go into Ann Arbor, very good defense, just completely steamroll them, put up 42 points, almost 500 yards of total offense. You win that game 42-13, beating Michigan by 29 points on their own field. Jim Harbaugh spoiling the year for Harbaugh. He lost to the 2 rivals that Michigan has, and it's as impressive of a victory as anybody else in the country has, and Ohio State's one loss is a last-second field goal to a team that might make the college football playoff. Even if they don't, they'll still be a top 10 team. So Buckeyes are still breathing. I really didn't think that they were going to have any chance of getting in, but, man, if Carolina wins, I think they're going to get in. We'll see. Okay, some bad news to pass along, possibly. I think we might even find this out later today, maybe tomorrow. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But Chris Ash, I think, is going to leave for Syracuse to be the head coach. I have no doubt if he's offered the job, he will take it, and it sounds like he will be offered the job. There was even a report, I didn't see this firsthand, that a Syracuse player actually posted on Twitter that Chris Ash is definitely going to be our next coach, and then deleted it, but actually put it out there that a Syracuse player said that he knows that Chris Ash is definitely going to be our next coach. So it sounds like the stars have aligned that Chris Ash is leaving for Syracuse, and this Bax is a huge loss, in my opinion, because I don't know why there was this, this game that was sort of played where they didn't want to say who was really calling the shots, but from everything I've been told by people close to the program, Chris Ash was calling the shots, and the improvement from 2013 to 2014 was exponential. I mean, it was just off the charts, and they went from a team that missed tackles to the team that had the fewest amount of missed tackles in the country. The schematics were better. They went to the rugby-style tackling. Just everything was better across the board, and they win a national championship in Chris Ash's first year calling the shots. And then this year, number 2 in the country in scoring defense, number 10 in total defense. I mean, this guy has done a great job. This will be a huge loss for the Buckeyes.
Massive loss. I can't understate how big of a loss it is. Do you want to know how big of a loss it is? Think back to 2013's pass defense and then get back to me. Chris Ash,
right.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, think about it here. Chris Ash absolutely was the difference between 2013's just disaster of a defense and the last 2 years of defense, which have been 2 of the best defensive years we've had in the last 15 at Ohio State. If Chris Ash leaves, it's a big hole for Ohio State to fill a defensive coordinator. And this Co thing, we've been saying this for 2 years. Fickle kept the Co thing because he's a good Buckeye and Urban respects him, but he was not calling the defense. I mean, that was just the bottom line on it. Losing Chris Ash it's not a surprise when you have so much success like Ash did, and I'm going to wish him the best if he officially leaves. And much like you, one of Syracuse's wide receivers was the guy who tweeted that, by the way, that he was going to be their head coach.
Right.
If Ash leaves, he's a good fit for them. He's recruited in a non-traditional recruiting area like at Wisconsin before. Syracuse is a place where, they haven't been good for a while, but there's still things in place for them to be successful. It's a Power 5 job. I mean, good for Chris Ash. Maybe even be good for the Buckeyes because since Illinois was dumb enough to stick around with an interim coach who had a losing record this year, that keeps Chris Ash away from Illinois where he was rumored to be one of the top candidates if they had made a change. So, it's great for Ash, and it's very good for Syracuse, but it's really bad for Ohio State because now Urban has to go out again and find yet another coordinator, and that's the side of the football that's really humming right now. So, it's sort of part of the business here, though. I mean, if you're having a successful, really good team, more often than not, you're going to have Tom Hermans and Chris Ashes that you're going to have to try to replace because they're going to become head coaches, And if you don't, then you find yourself in a Tim Beck situation where you're wondering how you end up replacing him in a tactful way.
Yeah, and just to be clear to the listeners, this is not official yet. We're just opining, but I think it'll be official sooner rather than later. We'll let you know. But again, not official yet. Chris Ash is still at Ohio State. I'm sure even if he leaves for Syracuse, he'll coach the Buckeyes, hopefully in the college football playoff, maybe in the Rose Bowl. We'll see what happens. But not official yet. We'll let you know on Bucknuts when and if this does become official. Congrats to Ezekiel Elliott and Taylor Decker. I was ready for these guys to get snubbed last night. I thought maybe they'd give Offensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten to Connor Cook. I thought maybe they'd give Offensive Lineman of the Year to Austin Blythe from Iowa. For once, the Buckeyes are not snubbed. Ezekiel Elliott, Running Back of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten. Taylor Decker, Offensive Lineman of the Year. So did this make up for the debacle the night before where Joey Bosa is Defensive Lineman of the Year, but he's not Defensive Player of the Year? And who is a defensive lineman? Carl Nassib, because defensive line stats are completely overrated, but I digress. I'm glad to see that Zeke and Taylor Decker did not get snubbed back. So your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe it's because Ohio State isn't going to win the conference this year, so they were deciding to actually rank some of the Ohio State's players where they should be rated. I'm interested to see now that Kirk Ferentz is not the second best record in the Big Ten, but sitting with the best record, whether or not they're going to change the Coach of the Year award again. That'll be fun. Maybe they'll actually award it to Urban Meyer or somebody else this year because Kirk Ferentz has had too good of a record. Remember, you have to go like 9-3 to get the Coach of the Year in the Big Ten. Any better than that, you're not eligible apparently, especially if you're at Ohio State. But I think the other thing is that they looked at Taylor Decker and said, this is a 4-year senior. He's going to be a guy who's going to be gone this year. He needs some recognition. Same for Zeke. Everybody knows he's gone after this year, and everybody knows he's also the tailback in the Big Ten. I mean, some of these things aren't debatable. Who are you going to pick instead of Zeke at tailback? You're going to try to tell me a Jordan Canzeri or someone? So it's good to see these guys recognized for their achievements, and I honestly think that this was, it was a nice change-up. It had a little more sense to it than Joey Bosa being the defensive lineman of the year, but then not winning the defensive player of the year because there was another defensive lineman who somehow won it. Like you said, that's just spinning yourself into logical pretzels. So I'm glad to see those guys get rewarded. I think both of them would much rather get rewarded with an opportunity to play on New Year's Eve instead of New Year's Day.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, last topic here. Ohio State Buckeye basketball season continues. It goes south. Buckeyes fall to 2-4 on the season. Lost 64-58 at home to number 10 Virginia last night. And for fans who might think this was a moral victory, it was not. Virginia, yes, they're 10th in the nation. They were playing without their starting point guard, their 3-year starting point guard. This was, and the Cavaliers were only favored by 7 points. So did the Buckeyes play them somewhat tight? Yeah, but this was not a very good performance from Ohio State. Again, turnovers continue to be the issue with this young team. 13 turnovers for the Buckeyes, only 8 for Virginia. Mark Loving scores 19 points, and I still dislike his game backs. He's soft. He has no energy. They have some players that I like. I like Keita Bates-Diop. I like Jayshawn Tate. Bates-Diop had 15 points. Tate had 12 points, 8 boards. I like what I see out of Daniel Giddens, but 1 rebound. If you're not going to score, I love how he blocks shots. I love how active he is. I love his toughness. I love his athletic ability. I see him as a future NBA player, as crazy as that might sound right now with his offensive game lacking, but he cannot have 1 rebound like he did last night. So it's the worst team of the Thad Matta era, which, I guess was inevitable, but Jaquan Lyle was supposed to be a guy that could come in here and be almost like a D'Angelo Russell light. No, he scored 3 points last night, 4 assists, 2 turnovers, was 1 for 7 from the field. This is just a bad basketball team, and the Big Ten is loaded. I mean, it's not going to get better. This is just going to be a long season. I still think next year they can be a very good team, but, man, it's putting it mildly back to say this is going to be a long season.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like Thad Matta's streak of 21 seasons is in jeopardy, and honestly, I'm not that surprised by this. Think about the team last year. The team last year was D'Angelo Russell equals awesome. Everybody else is just kind of there. And then you had to replace virtually the entire roster, I mean, so whenever you're losing the guy who is the only really major positive driver on your entire team and a bunch of experience, then you have a bunch of inexperienced guys with no driver left to move the ball around on the court. I mean, D'Angelo Russell was the heartbeat of the team last year. Now you have everybody figuring out all their new roles. The only good thing you can say is at least we had a center who wasn't just standing there for one. I mean, that's a nice change-up for OSU basketball. But, everybody's going to start questioning in the next couple of weeks whether Thad Matta is going to be around much longer. People are going to question whether his health is going to be there again, because everybody knows the situation with his foot. This is going to be one of these things all year that's going to be really annoying to have to listen to, is whether, quote-unquote, Thad Matta is done, because he has the team missing the tournament for the first time forever. It happens. Young teams exist, and sometimes you just don't have quite the stars line up in terms of recruiting to have a D'Angelo Russell waltz in the door and massively exceed his recruiting rating. So you're right, though. This is the worst team in the Thad Matta era. It's a very, very, very good Big Ten this year. I mean, that's the other problem. It's not like the Buckeyes are playing in a weak conference. The Big Ten seems to be the top athletic conference in the country right now, because it looks like they're the top basketball league, too. I mean, you have teams like Purdue are back on the rise again. I mean, even Northwestern's been playing well. So, and then you bring in Maryland, who's a top 10 team. I mean, these recent additions in the Big Ten, at least in terms of Maryland in basketball, have made the league even better. It was already the best conference in the country before Maryland got here in basketball. The Big Ten is loaded. Ohio State's going to have a long season. I'm just hopeful they can win some more of these non-conference games and get a little bit of momentum going into the Big Ten. But, I can tell you right now, that Kentucky game in a couple of weeks is going to be ugly with a capital U.
Great stuff, as always, out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. A couple programming notes. The Buckeye basketball team will get back in action Saturday at home against VMI at 4:30. I'm sure that will be a sold-out game. Not at all. More importantly, today, we're going to interview a lot of Ohio State players, prominent players. Interviews at 3:30 this afternoon. This was announced late last night. So interviews today, 3:30. We're going to talk to J.T. Barrett. We're going to talk to Joey Bosa, Taylor Decker, Raekwon McMillan, Josh Perry, and a couple more players to be named later, according to the SID. I like the way you put that out there. We're going to have a couple players to be named later. So, again, J.T. Barrett, Joey Bosa, Taylor Decker, Raekwon McMillan, Josh Perry, and more. We will have stories, bolts, and videos on what those young men have to say. Thanks again to Matt Baxendell, and thanks to you for tuning into the show. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Take it away, best damn band in the land.